Bhangarh Fort rose from the Aravalli Hills like a forgotten memory carved in stone, its broken gates whispering warnings to anyone who dared to listen, and on a moonless evening when the wind carried the scent of dust and old secrets, a young historian named Arav stood before those gates with a camera, a torch, and a curiosity too strong to silence, because legend said Bhangarh was not merely abandoned but awake, breathing through its ruins, echoing with voices of those who never left, and as Arav crossed the threshold where the archaeological survey's warning sign faded into shadow, he felt a sudden chill as though the fort had recognized him, the walls stretching tall and hollow, streets lying empty like veins drained of life, yet humming with a low vibration that settled in his bones, and with every step he took, memories not his own seemed to brush past his mind. Laughter from a market that no longer existed, the clang of temple bells cracked by time, and the faint sound of anklets running down stone stairs. While the torchlight revealed crumbling homes with doorways frozen mid-scream, as if the people inside had vanished in a single breath, and Arav reminded himself he was here to document myths, to separate fear from fact for his channel, yet the fort refused to be reduced to content, because suddenly the air thickened and a whisper slid across his ear, calling his name though he had told no one where he was going, and when he turned, the whisper became many, overlapping, pleading, warning, mocking, and he realized these were not random sounds but echoes, repeating moments of terror and longing trapped within stone, and as he walked deeper, the palace courtyard opened before him, moonlight spilling like pale water over broken pillars, where he saw a shadow standing at the far end, perfectly still, too dark to be absence, and when Arav raised his camera, the screen flickered and showed faces instead of the courtyard. Dozens of them, eyes wide, mouths open in silent cries, and the torch sputtered as if frightened, forcing him to move forward, heart pounding, because the shadow began to drift closer without footsteps, and in that moment the story he had heard since childhood returned with clarity, the tale of a powerful sorcerer who fell in forbidden love with Princess Ratnavati, whose beauty was said to bend fate itself, and how his obsession turned to rage when she rejected him, leading to a curse that swallowed the fort whole. And as the shadow reached the moonlight, Arav saw not a monster but a figure wrapped in royal robes, face cracked like ancient paint, eyes glowing with centuries of grief, and the figure raised a hand, and the courtyard transformed, walls rebuilding themselves in a rush of sound, lanterns igniting, people appearing as if time had reversed, and Arav stood in the middle of a living city moments before its fall, watching merchants argue, children laugh, guards patrol, unaware of the doom folding in around them, and then the echoes grew louder, turning into screams as the vision darkened, the palace collapsing inward, and Arav felt himself being pulled into the memory, his own voice lost among the dead, until he shouted for it to stop, and the fort obeyed, snapping back into ruin, leaving him on his knees, gasping, while the shadow faded into mist, and a final whisper curled around his thoughts, telling him that Bhangarh remembers everyone who enters and never truly lets them leave. And as dawn's first hint touched the sky, Arav fled the fort, shaken but alive, knowing he had only scratched the surface of what waited inside, and as he reached safety, he looked back once more to see countless silhouettes lining the walls, watching, listening, echoing his footsteps as if promising that his story with Bhangarh was far from over, and if you feel the chill while hearing this, remember to stay with this channel, subscribe, and walk with us deeper into stories that refuse to stay buried. The nights after Bhangarh did not return Arav to normal life, because sleep brought the fort back to him in fragments, cracked staircases leading nowhere, bells ringing underwater, voices repeating his name in perfect rhythm. And each dream ended with the same question whispered from the dark, asking why he had come, and driven by fear and fascination, he returned to the fort at twilight, believing that understanding the echoes was the only way to silence them, and this time he carried no camera, only a recorder and a promise to listen, because legend said the dead of Bhangarh did not crave fear but remembrance, and as he stepped inside, the fort welcomed him with an unnatural stillness, the wind gone, the insects silent, as though the ruins were holding their breath, and the echoes began again, clearer now, forming words instead of noise, telling stories of unfinished lives, of vows broken by pride and power, of a curse that did not simply kill but trapped souls between moments, forcing them to relive the instant of loss again and again, and Arav followed the sound to the old temple where the princess once prayed, its idol shattered, eyes erased by time, And there he felt the presence of Ratnavati herself, not as a ghostly figure but as a weight in the air, dignified even in death, and through the recorder came her voice, calm and sorrowful, explaining that the sorcerer's curse had been fueled not by magic alone but by the fear of the people, a fear so strong it chained them to the place. And the only release left was for the living to hear them without turning away, and as Arav listened, the echoes softened, changing from screams to sighs, the fort stones warming slightly as if relieved, and for the first time, he understood that Bhangarh was not hungry for souls but stories, needing witnesses to carry its truth beyond the hills, and when the first star appeared, the fort shifted once more, showing him a final vision of the sorcerer, not triumphant but broken, realizing too late that his obsession had destroyed everything he desired, and as that image dissolved, the echoes quieted, leaving a peace so fragile Arav barely dared to breathe, and when he stepped out at dawn, the fort seemed smaller, less oppressive, as though a burden had been shared, and back home, Arav uploaded his experience, not as a challenge or a dare, but as a reminder that some places are haunted not by monsters but by memory, and that listening can be braver than running, and as you hear these echoes through this story, remember that every subscribe, every share, keeps these forgotten voices alive, so join this channel, stay connected, and together we will continue to explore the mysteries that history tried to silence, because some echoes only fade when they are finally heard.